The 11-year-old whipped his head around, confusion very clear on his face. When she waved her hand in a downward motion, Lincoln obliged and set the infant down on her feet. Lily ran while walked unevenly fast towards Lynn, who raised a brow at what she was doing. First, she grabbed the bag, which Lynn released because she thought it was what Lily wanted. However, she immediately backpedaled on the idea, realizing how dangerous a plastic bag can be to a baby. Reaching down to take it back from Lily, Lynn was caught by surprise when the baby put the bag down and grabbed her instead. Using what little strength she had, Lily tugged on the much older girl forward. "Lynn, come," she spoke. Lynn didn't know what else Lily was just being Lily, or was there something else that she had planned? Either way, she obeyed. The brunette had to make sure she didn't move too fast, yet she forces Lily to trip over herself. Lincoln then stood still as the baby brought his older sister to him, and unsure of what to think about this. It was a cute scene at first and foremost, but while he did trust Lily, and whatever intentions she had, he subconsciously planted a foot behind him. The urge to back away and shut the door gave as the two girls drew closer. By the time Lily was dragged into a semi-reluctant Lynn to his doorstep, Lincoln clasped his hand around him and tried to steel his nerves. Now Lily panted a little before sitting down, a confident smile on her face as she looked up to her siblings. Both of them looked at her with some hesitation. They could tell that Lily was expecting them to make up easily. No one wanted to tell her that the issue at hand wasn't as typical forgive and forget. But would they really say sorry to know that face? Looking back at Lincoln, Lynn gave a slight smile as she held out the issues to him. "So you still want these?" She held out the comic books in hand. Lincoln stared at the issues for a few seconds before gently taking them from her. "Thanks," he replied. The hesitation and unevenness in his tone was quite apparent to Lynn, but not to Lily, who started crawling away from her as her mission was accomplished. Remembering that her father was making dinner, Lynn knew that would pose a significant obstacle for Lincoln. He may have seen her face numerous times to the point where he didn't outright shut her out, but being forced to sit with everyone during the last meal of the day made the former athlete worry it would be uncomfortable for the boy to be sitting with all 10 of his sisters. However, it didn't hurt to ask, especially since when Lynn and Lincoln in front her knew more a few seconds. Lynn then rubbed the back of her head. "Are you gonna come down to dinner? I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to. I know you're not at ease being around everyone yet." Lincoln didn't give an immediate response, though he narrowed his eyes and tapped his chin. Not wanting to seem like she was forcing him to decide, "You could stay in your room if you want. Mom or Dad could. I'll come." Lynn's eyes felt eye-wide as her mouth partially hung open. "Huh?" "I said I'll come down," Lincoln repeated, addressing her with what Lynn assumed that it was a determined gleam in his eye. "But you're gonna have to sit next to me while Lily sits with Mom or Dad." Lynn blinked a few times as she processed those words in her head. "Okay?" She was expecting Lincoln to keep avoiding her and her sisters while they tried to slowly coerce him into opening up. Slow being the best operative word here. Getting over the fact that Lincoln just been out of the blue decided to return home was one thing, but Lynn was now growing worried as he was rushing things a little too fast. Man with a plan he might be, but the last thing anyone wants was for Lincoln to decide that he overestimated himself and leave the house again. Lynn was so caught up in her thoughts that she jumped a little when the door closed mere inches from her face. Taking a moment to compose herself, Lynn then turned towards her room. "Okay, he's going to be at dinner." She then leaned down to grab the used plastic bag. "And wants me to sit next to him," the brunette muttered to herself, throwing open her bedroom door and dumping the useless bag in the trash. "Don't know that's luck or something else." "What is?" a monotone voice asked. Lynn shrieked, her body becoming stiff like a plank as she looked to where the voice had came from. She finally settled on Lucy, who sat on her bed with a book in her hands with a stare of indifference while painting on her face, as she figured that it could have been Lynn's reaction for the second time she opened her mouth. The emo huffled a little before redirecting her attention towards her text. You guys really need to be more aware of your surroundings. Lynn's eyelids narrowed until they nearly almost shut. Well, excuse me for being caught up in my thoughts, she spat before marching over to her bed. Not my fault you always had to walk in so quietly. Lucy's book did well at hiding the smug grin forming her lips. Thanks, she muttered. Knowing the more urgent matters, she had popped the question. Did Lincoln take it well? Lynn didn't speak for a moment, making Lucy assume the worst. She didn't go through him, but yet that wasn't the response Lynn had threw at her seconds later. He took it a little too well. Lucy's head immediately shot up from behind her. Though I doubt anything would have gone if Lily hadn't been there. Lucy raised a brow. What did she do? Was her reply as she let out her book down on her lap. She dragged me over to Link, and so I can give him my gift. Impetus on a drag. She just pulled my fingers the whole time while I followed her. The brunette chuckled a bit. I mean, have you ever seen a baby try to drag someone way older than them? It's cute, but... Lynn, focus, Lucy hissed. What do you mean by saying your plan worked out? Oh, right, Lynn folded her arms. Well, he took the comments that got him, and I asked him if he was going to be down for dinner, since Dad's already cooking. I tried to downplay it for him because I figured he'd want to stay in his room probably forever if he hasn't changed his mind about us. Lynn leaned back on the bed, putting her arms out from behind her just to keep her head level. Instead, he's actually going to join us. Lucy blinked a few more times at that last sentence that played on repeat in her head. What? I know, right? Is it just me, or is it Lincoln getting a bit over his head here? I don't know if he's already done either. You trying to talk to him I can understand, but says nothing about how he'll react to the rest of us. Lucy looked down at her book. Especially me, since I scare just about anyone without even trying. The unsettled feeling in her stomach made it impossible for her to focus on reading, with the current piece of news floating in her brain. The moment hopelessly staring at the pages, Lucy sighed before shutting down with a loud clap. True, but it's not like it hadn't fought over her first. He just wants to sit between me and Lily, being so close to Mom and Pops. Lucky. Lynn shook her head, with a deep frown crossing her lips. Just wait, though, until Lincoln goes to get one of his episodes and smacks me in the face. She bit her cheek that was slapped with a plastic tray a couple months back, with his glass plate. Lucy cringed a little, just imagining how gory the scene would be. You'd think she'd find the act amazing, but Hillary, out of all this appears, if it's your siblings catching glass shards in their face. Does anyone else know? Nope, the brunette pointed out to her roommate. Just you. Sigh, Lucy spoke gravely as a chill ran down her spine. Glancing at the clock on her nightstand, she cast a grim look at her digital numbers. We don't have time for a meeting. Lynn just shrugged. We got this far without screwing up. She kicked her feet to the bed before lying down, hands behind her head. Can't get any worse. Sorry, but how can you be happy about this? I'm not, Lynn spoke with clarity. I'm just hoping Lincoln knows what he's doing. Lincoln almost already regretted his decision to attend dinner with the rest of the Loud family, and by almost, we're talking like 70% chance here. He certainly didn't mind dining with his parents, especially after how he missed Lynn Sr.'s famous cooking. Sorry, Harold and Howard, but Lincoln's dad just is miles better in the kitchen. Plucking another piece of steak into his mouth, the boy was to cut himself short, giving a moan of ecstasy as his taste buds danced with joy. The moment was cut-lived short, though, as the bite only offered a few precious seconds of relief before the middle child was reminded of the current situation. As Lincoln swallowed his piece, he gave a quick glimpse to the table, keeping a wary eye on his siblings. As he insisted earlier, Lynn then sat to the left, where Lily sat to his right. The baby himself was being fed by Rita, who sat next to Lynn Sr. at one end of the table. Everyone else was scattered around whatever seat they chose. Heck, Lori was directly sitting across from Lincoln after all. Just one look at Lincoln would make you think that it was being indifferent to it all. On the outside, sure, but once you cracked open the surface of the exterior, you'd see a nerve-wracked kid just waiting for the opportunity to bolt out if something went really harsh. It was hard enough coaching himself not to fall back on his word, but Lincoln couldn't help but with one snare that kept saying in his head. Lincoln fidgeted with every few moments as he paced around his room. He instructed Lynn in such a way that the middle child would always sit between the former sporty sister and the youngest loud of the family, all while being close to proximity from his parents. He could have chose to sit between the adults, which would have made the most ideal spot, would have given the greater protection. But that came the risk of Lily potentially being under the influence of their other sisters, and this was on top of the fact that he still didn't wrap his mind about why she brought himself and Lynn together. Was Lily trying to make us happy? Or was that all part of Lynn's plan? Lincoln murmured as he wrapping his fingers across his arm. "Kids, dinner!" came the unmistakable voice of Lynn Sr. Lincoln flinched a bit upon hearing his dad shout, "Dang it!" He swore as his arms fell to the sides. Already he could hear the stampede of nine-headed beast making its way downstairs. Leave him alone and silence followed. Lincoln gulped a little before reaching towards the doorknob. "Here goes nothing." Slowly the loud boy opened the door, peeking precautiously through the crack to make sure he truly was alone. Not a soul but himself was on the upper floor, and he could hear the clattering of dishes coming from the stairwell. Lincoln proceeded, with another eye over his shoulder, in case if someone tried to surprise him from the rear, only to stop once he reached the top of the stairs. He was about to have a reunion with his sisters, who had made him live in fear for 2 whole months, and it wasn't going to be a friendly one. He could assure her that, although he had told Lynn where he wanted to sit, and Lincoln had his doubts whether she'd follow her instructions without asking. For all he knew, this could be a very well repeat of the sweet spot ordeal. There was an so-called ideal seat at the table, but that would stop his sisters from thinking otherwise. However, the sounds of things didn't seem like anyone else was fighting. "I'm probably just overreacting again," Lincoln muttered, as he gripped tight on the railing, as he thought about over the reasons why he came in the home in the first place. "Come on, Lincoln, you need to be brave. There's another chance to prove it." He stared down at the stairs. "If I can remain calm all around my other sisters, then maybe I can get back to the way everyone was wanting me to be back." The boy frowned a little, the few memories cropping up about him, wearing his ace-savvy costume, along with the moments where his strength was questioned. Well, maybe not as weak. Upon reaching the ground floor, Lincoln shuffled in his feet along with the carpet as he approached the dining room entrance. Placing a hand on the wall, he peered around, spotting his family already in the midst of munching on their steaks. Each person had a somber expression on their face for a reason he didn't quite understand. Lynn Sr. looked up at him as he was cut off by another piece, noting the depressed gazes of his daughters as they chewed on their food. Junior looked a little bit worse than the others, likely because of the empty seat between herself and Lily. He knew exactly why they were so glum. The father even wanted an extra mile for fix his son a place in case if he decided to join them. However, Lynn knew that it was dubious at best. Back when Lincoln was being released from the hospital, the Partridge had often set a 13th play on the table, before remembering the harsh reality that his son wouldn't be home for a while. Now that Lincoln was there, though, it never felt more depressing to see the food growing cold. All that changed the moment where he sat down and left, spotted an all too familiar tuft of white hair. "Lincoln?" Lynn Sr. called out, drawing the attention of the others. For once, Lincoln wished his hair was different too. With everyone staring directly at him, the lad found no choice but to go into the open. Hey, you feel like eating? Dad made you a plate." Junior fumbled around with the plate next to hers. Lincoln found himself once again caught on the crossroads. He could have said no, and that would have just been the end of it. But what would have been the point coming after this far just to give up? Lincoln would admit that he blew the opportunity the first time he worked up the courage to seek out Lynn, with his paranoia acting up after Luann's sudden appearance. The middle child then bit his lower lip and his fist tightened. He wasn't going to blow this time. And this was the smell of steak was making his stomach growl in anticipation. Lincoln straightened his posture a bit as his lips thinned out. Yeah, I'm all feeling really hungry right now, he replied sharply. Breathing in, he walked over to the table, doing his best not to cave under the constant staring. Lynn pulled out his chair for him, startling him with a few seconds. Before he realized it, it was just an act of courtesy, something that I rarely saw from her. Sitting down, she pushed himself up to the table, making sure not to smash him between the chair and the double chair edge. Once he had got comfortable, Lincoln picked up a fork and used it to cut a small piece of steak. Looks like Dad looks good. He pretty much cooked it good, Lynn thought to himself as the heat from the seasoned meat drifted into his nose, making his mouth water a little. The second the boy put his fork in his mouth, Lincoln entered what could be described as the best feeling on earth. Being away for so long must have made him forget what Lynn Sr.'s cooking tasted like, because he immediately started cutting off piece after piece of the steak, shoving it into his mouth. If everyone was making weird glances at him, Lincoln could honestly give a little less concern. He didn't want the bliss of it to end. Lynn Sr. himself would have been proud even. Unfortunately, Lincoln's emotional high came to a crashing halt when he felt his stomach throbbing uncomfortably. Intentionally, Lincoln would have just passed it off as him eating too fast, but the strange gurgling and flips started to make him feel nauseous. Lincoln groaned, slowly letting go of the fork as he started to feel a little listless. Are you okay, Lincoln? Rita asked, momentarily pausing from her feeding the infant loud. I think I ate too. Lincoln's face turned green as he started to heave. His stomach was already beginning to point at sending his dinner back up. He quickly turned in to try and rush to the restroom, only felt whatever energy he had left in him. The only thing he could do was point his head towards the floor. Lynn flinched as she scooted away from her brother as he vomited onto the floor and grew immediately worried when she saw his puke had dark patches of blood in it. Both adults got up from their seats to see if he was okay, only immediately realized something was more serious going on. The white-haired boy lost his grip on the seat and fell to the floor. Lincoln didn't know why he suddenly felt so ill. His face scrunched in pain as his stomach felt like it was burning. His body began to convulse uncontrollably as his heart thumped hard in his chest, feeling like it was about banging against his ribcage. Lincoln, say something! Does it hurt? Lynn Sr. yelled, turning to Lincoln on his back. Oh God, he's turning pale! Junior, call an ambulance! Rita ordered. Lynn wasted no time and immediately vacant over dining, having the phone in the living room to her ear, frantically dialing the emergency services. The partner asked again what was ailing his son, but Lincoln could only give soft whimper as a reply. The burning in his stomach spread to his lungs and throat, and soon the boy found himself struggling to breathe. His lightheadedness increased again, and Lincoln found his vision started to become less focused, and he attempted to cry for help as more tears streamed out of his reddening eyes. But the only thing anyone could understand was a pained rasp. Lincoln's hearing began to fail, making the cries of the parents and the littlest sister indescribable from the white noise that was overtaking him. Blackness started to develop around the edges of Lincoln's vision, meaning his brain was starting to shut down. He blinked away more tears, catching a glimpse of his frantic parents and baby, who didn't know what was going on. Shifting of what remained of his vision towards the rest of his sisters, Lincoln was completely shaken to his core of what might be the last thing he ever seen in darkness claimed of him. Each girl's had a knowing smirk on their faces, their eyes having red pupils, and their mouths started to part, show grinning teeth, like they were relishing his demise. Did they poison me? That single thought playing in Lincoln's head, before the lack of oxygen finally made him pass out. A daydream like that would have easily made Lincoln want to skip dinner entirely, even if someone brought his meal up to him. However, as convincible as that scenario may have been, the more local side of Lincoln didn't let his debilitating fear run away with it. He saw for himself that Lisa's chemistry set was completely gone, and he only had some doubt that Mom and Dad wouldn't have checked for any spare chemicals she might have left lying around. On top of that, after deducing how many of them could have slipped poison into his food, the girls might have been pressed hard not to get caught doing so. Like to hoover over the creations from start to finish, and Lincoln had a little bit of doubt that it was noticed something was off. But that didn't stop him from beating the crap out of me when Mom and Dad were busy hiding. Lincoln groaned awkwardly as moments before he heard dinner was being ready. In spite of his parents' incomplete penance back then, didn't appear to be on the case now. Either way, he settled on getting down there before any of his sisters did. Which brings us to now. Similar to his little daydream, Lincoln still enjoyed the food that his dad prepped for everyone. But unlike his daydream, Lynn Sr. hadn't been so sure if Lincoln would come down and eat with them, prompting the father to immediately fix up a 13th plate from his chosen seat. Lincoln had a chance to study each of his sisters as they came down to eat. The looks of astonishment on their faces made it obvious that none of them, sans Lynn, and probably Lucy, expected his presence. Even now his sisters prepared rigid and tried to look at any other direction but him. If they did happen to glance at him, it was only for a second before quickly darting their eyes towards something else. If Lincoln could recall a similar moment like this, it had to be the time Lynn unexpectedly showed him during the lunch at school. The boy pursed his lips. "I guess they're really trying to make me more comfortable," he told himself. A light sigh escaped from him moments later, even though I'm still far from it. Lynn Sr. gazed over his family as they finished up his steak. Quiet meals had been a mainstay since Lincoln's absence, but that didn't mean they weren't unnerving. He and Rita had been used to the children would act so immediately that it still made their hearts tear at the lack of optimism floating around. As for Lincoln, well, Lynn Sr. didn't expect his son to eat dinner with everyone, but that didn't seem was a possibility. However, he hadn't set up a plate for his son, as he figured out it would be very unlikely for Lincoln to join them. Instead, the chef had concealing his fear. Did they even have a chance to be a real family again? Sadly, that wasn't the case, as Lincoln looked around nervous as ever when his sisters came down. Not that the girls were faring from much better. Not a sound was heard from the movement of the utensils on plates, Lily occasionally giggling as her mother fed her. Before Lynn had to debate any further, he had felt a soft spot tapping to his side. "Everyone was on the edge, dear. Do you think because Lincoln's around?" Rita whispered in a low voice. The father nodded. "Everyone barely said anything over the past few weeks. I thought they'd be happy with Lincoln back in the house. But this is much as a ghost town as many other day." The other two gave a quick glance at Lincoln, who was focused on his food, but chewed slowly. Although he appeared to be okay, the adults could see the fear in his eyes based on their rapid movement, and given the fact that his pupils were smaller than normal. Next to him, Junior sat normal, although she gave a frequent glances to Lincoln, and her shoulders were tensed up. Likely in the event, he snapped, and she just needed to get away from him as quick as possible. Across from Lincoln, Lori was relaxed in her seat, although she didn't look at Lincoln directly. She turned her head a few times, only to point out where she could have eyed her brother from the aerial. But the same could be said for the rest, although Lana leaned forward to the table, get a better look at her brother, only to be yanked back by her twin, who gave a disapproving glare. "Okay, everyone's nervous and feeling peachy, probably not just too busy trying to freak their brother out, but we can save this," Lynn Sr. told himself. "You just gotta find a way to break the ice." He tapped his finger on the table. "So you probably just had everyone on the table redirect their attention towards their father. So how was your girls' trip at the mall?" Luna gave the Partage a half-idled stare. "Didn't you ask that earlier, Pops? Don't. Right. Lynn Sr. slumped a little. Well, honey, he turned to Rita. How was work? Rita sent the man a confused stare, to which Lynn subtly noted her so she would carry on with the conversation. Oh, the Maharaj muttered before speaking out. Well, I had to deal with another root canal appointment again, unfortunately. She furrowed her brows a little. It was with Flip and myself, and David had to strap him down again. Since he wouldn't stop moving. Rita pierced her lips. Probably should have put him under too, since he nearly screamed my head off. Wow, Lynn Sr. winced a little as he set his forks down. Is he going to be okay? I'm more concerned about losing my hearing the next time I have to assist in his checkup. Rita hummed as she mulled and thought. Maybe I can ask Sarah if she can switch shifts with me next time Flip is due. The mother of 11 shrugged. So? Rita looked at her son. In those few seconds, Rita debated on whether or not it was a good idea to put Lincoln on the spot. He was already anxious as he was, and she didn't want to make it worse. However, a part of a simple question wouldn't hurt, especially since she wanted to know if he was settling in okay. Did you finish unpacking, Lincoln? The boy flinched a little upon hearing his name being called, but certainly grabbing the attention of the others as his fork clanged on the dinner plate twice before Lincoln steadied his hand. The middle child pursed her lips as he felt several pairs of eyes watching his every move, wanting that spotlight off of him as soon as possible. Yes, he blurted out quickly with a stutter. Okay, that's good, Rita replied. She wanted to say more, to ask him how he truly felt being at home again, but she knew such questions weren't best to ask at dinner table, especially knowing the first thing Lincoln would talk about is his sisters. The Maharaj lightly tapped her son's shoulder before leaning towards him. We'll talk more later, she whispered to him. Lincoln lifted his head, an eye narrowed in confusion as he walked over to look towards his mother. However, she immediately went back to eating for a moment, so asking her to clarify was out of the question, focusing on his own plate. The steak his dad did wonderfully had disappeared into Lincoln's stomach as he practically demolished his mashed potatoes, corn, and plenty of collard greens. Looking down at the table, Lincoln could see his sisters were nearly done, not that he wanted to stick around any longer. Besides, if he left now, that would mean he would have plenty of time to get himself ready for bed before the line could be formed up in the bathroom. Lincoln scooted over his chair back, grabbing his plate and stood up. Thanks for dinner, Dad, Lincoln then spoke calmly, before walking briskly to the kitchen. With his back turned, the girls turned towards their brother as he disappeared behind the archway. Everyone then heard the sound of water and a couple of dishes shifting the sink before it was silent again. Hearing the footfalls, the girls quickly acted like nothing was going on. As Lincoln quickly strolled past them and started up the stairs halfway, Lincoln contemplated whether or not he should use the shower. One quick whiff of his armpit had him gagged. Once everyone was certain that Lincoln was back on the second floor, the girls breathed a collective sigh. Well, that went smooth, Luna stated. Seriously, I thought we were going to blow it any second, Luann agreed, shuffling the last of her food in her mouth. Lenny let out a gasp as she dropped her fork. Linky could have exploded? Lisa rolled her eyes. Not in the literal sense, Lenny, although I am still surprised our brother even bothered to come down for dinner. Surely our more presence in one room would have been obvious. Pretty sure Mom and Dad being around a lot would have had to do it, Lynn fumbled with her parents. Actually, Junior, I don't think we had much to do it, Lynn Sr. stated, resting his elbows on the table. I mean, it would have been better that your brother is finally getting used to being around you girls again. Lisa hummed and thought. It would make sense for him to estimate the frame to which he could withstand with her presence, before anxiety builds up to the point forces him to seek shelter. Yeah? Well, I'm very sure he would have slammed his door on me if Lily wasn't with him, Junior huffed, shuffling what remained of her steak into her mouth. So what about tomorrow? Lucy asked. It's a school night. I doubt Lincoln would want to ride in the van. Lori pierced her lips. He could take the bus or walk. She shrugged. Not like he has before. I'm pretty sure he still remembers that line that forms in the bathroom every morning. While I don't feel comfortable with leaving the house very early, I can see that happening, Rita stated, pushing her chair back before grabbing hers and Lily's plate. Either way, I'm still going to have to talk with Lincoln, Make sure he's all right, she said, as she walked past everyone to the kitchen.